it's ridiculous. They just basically threw a CNC machine at that plate. It doesn't appear to be hand refined at all. It's just a bunch of squares on a square plate. I find the rotor cool looking, but it's also hilarious. It reminds me of that South Park episode in which the Canadians have not yet invented the wheels, so their cars are run on square wheels. And it's just this desperate attempt to put a square rotor which does a circular motion in a square case. This whole watch is just basically just a ridicule of itself. And also I think it's, well, maybe not its customers, I wouldn't go so far as to say, but it's really quite bad.
Greetings and welcome to this week's aBlogtoWatch Weekly. There's the four of us this week. Ariel, how are you this week?
I'm so happy that our host is back. I've missed you.
It does feel.
I feel like an imposter when I'm doing
Happy New Year. Is it still okay to say Happy New Year? I don't know.
Yeah, snakes.
For you,
something.
it is.
For me, snake. I will come on to the whole snakes thing shortly. David, how are you?
I'm okay.
You seems to be. You're kind of in a little. It's a bit dark for those watching video. It's kind of like moody. You've got a wee.
It's very moody here.
Going.
It's moody and miserable.
Miserable there. Ripley.
Yeah.
A man never known to be miserable. How are we doing?
A man who's fundamentally miserable, so he's, if I just keep that deep down.
It's very philosophical.
It's just a deep inner sadness.
Yeah, exactly. You just smile through the tears. I'm well. I'm doing
The four of us actually do represent the global mood right now, actually.
Yeah. Is 2025 getting off to a better start than 2024 did? Do you think this is going to be a better year? I mean, we could talk.
Rick, my state's been on fire since basically the whole start of the year. It's like if we're rounding into the end of the month, it's basically been on fire for the entirety of it.
We just need a snowstorm to finish us off.
I don't think it could have been worse last year than it currently is this year. It's been a nightmare 3 weeks.
Don't test fate, okay? It'll show you.
Yeah, 2026. Oh, you just wait and see.
Oh, you thought that was bad?
Yeah, that's when the giant monsters came from the sea.
We haven't had an earthquake in a while. Don't forget that.
Oh, God.
Cthulhu is about to be awakened, yeah.
2025 and 2026 sound like those kind of years that when we were kids, some of us in the 80s and 90s, they were making
supposed to have flying cars. I know.
Well, they were making the science fiction about those years, in 2025, disaster. And now we're kind of here, and it kind of is. There you go. And there's also the song in the year 2525. Do you remember that? No?
Well, the surveillance state, that came true.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. Right, well, let's get on with our show and see what's what. Joseph's in the chat. Good morning, Joseph. Anybody else in the chat? Or if you're listening to this on the podcast on a Thursday or Friday, and you can't wait till a Thursday or Friday, if you go and find the YouTube channel, aBlogtoWatch Weekly Live, then you can tune into the live recording of the show, which will tend to have some little added extras, and you can obviously join in the chat and get a live shout out and give your opinions on Hit, Miss, Maybe. Let's start with a bit of a broad look. In the last week or two, LVMH Watch Week has happened. Did anybody notice?
It seemed like something on the way to Watches and Wonders, like a mere stop.
A mere stop of like a journey on the yellow brick road.
I think what's interesting is how Tiffany is trying to do like the art thing. Like they've been wanting to do that for a while, but like the artistic high end, kind of like a combination of like Boucheron and Cartier a decade ago. And I wonder who that client is for these days. Sort of the ultra high end avant-garde ladies watch, which was fun maybe in more conspicuous times. And I always wonder, like, are they being super trendy? Like, is this in, or did they design this product category, for a group of consumers that is less overt these days? Like the people that have the money aren't feeling as amazing showing it, or maybe it's the perfect watch because now we're celebrating classism, so now people on the up and up really want to show it with these elaborate artistic. I mean, I don't even know how to describe some of these Tiffany watches. I mean, Ripley, how would you I don't know. Explain some of these
I'm
things.
art centric, yeah, very, very art centric, high end, you know. Not, I mean, but that's kind of what, if you think about Tiffany, I think most people before they think of like even anything related to watches, think of, you know, jewelry at various different price points, whether it's like the little sterling silver keychain or, you know, some of their high jewelry stuff. They kind of really make that gamut of jewelry. So it makes sense that timepieces would fit into that world, but you're not going to make like little keychain watches. So I guess it's a logical thing. You know, we need more just pretty novelty in the industry. I don't think, you know, we need a Tiffany diver per se. So I think this is a good thing for them. At least it'll be interesting.
Well, there's that.
I'm not sure what was this. Was this is this the Tiffany watch you're referring to?
Oh no,
This
this
no?
is conservative and basic. I
Oh,
love
right,
how
okay.
the company that in the I guess 90s and 2000s was very popular for sterling silver charm bracelets, essentially for a few $100s, now has one that's sterling silver for, was it close to $7,000?
So let's just do one of these website trolls of Tiffany, because I've got a sneaky suspicion. Is it possible that all of these watches that have been released by Tiffany do not actually feature on their website? So here's their watches site. Do any of these look like new releases? Because they seem
Yeah,
to be keeping it a
these are
secret.
all actually relatively new. I mean, these are not watches that they've talked a lot about before. You see some of the old atlases down there. Those aren't necessarily new. You know, Tiffany hasn't really redone its men's stuff. I like Tiffany's men's watches. I've always been a fan of them. I I just think that, you know, since LVMH purchased them, it hasn't really had a clear definition from the watch perspective. Yeah, you're looking at mostly older product here. Um, I just don't know that anything where they do right now per se feels American. I mean, it's an American heritage brand.
Look, it's that, as we discussed last week. It's I'll go back to that screen. It's American blue. After
None of
last
these come with
week's
cheese.
Well,
flamingo
one of
It's like,
thing.
don't they have enough brands based in Paris already not to try to make another one that looks like it?
Well, I think one of the releases from this latest batch, it was very gem set and it was green. And I just think back to David's comment about it's it's a very green hue of blue, and this one I think probably edged there further than, I mean, it's like an emerald green color with a gem set dial, but um it, you know, high end watches make more sense for me for Tiffany than, you know, the kind of like a simple kind of traditional thing from a high end brand. So I think it's a good shift for them. You know, where else would they fit in among the parent group of watch offerings?
I just don't know that any of America's traditional Tiffany fans are into this. This seems for a Tiffany fan in a different part of the world than America. And again, I'm interested in hearing feedback, but as someone that has sort of knew the Tiffany brand for a long time, this doesn't feel anything like the brand I was accustomed to outside from certain very high end stuff. And I'm just not sure that LVMH has captured a mainstream Tiffany, because I always thought Tiffany was supposed to be a volume brand. Unless if they want to make it super high end and more exclusive, I guess it's a pivot. But if they want to benefit from that goodwill that Tiffany's been built for decades, I'm just not sure if it fits into that.
Here's a conspiracy theory. What if they just needed to create some really expensive watches so that people can build their purchase history with Tiffany and then get allocated the next Terry Stern Cubitus Tiffany dial collab, which we know will come at some point in the future?
I don't know. I think that just gives Patek and that color just too much credit, but maybe you're right.
Is tell me where Tiffany fits in. I have this view over here, which I believe may be incorrect, that Tiffany is viewed as being this real high end jewelers, but actually, when you go to the store in New York, it's not. It's like expensive, but it's not Van Cleef and Arpels or that kind of thing.
No, they always had their super high end thing, but they made their money on the aspirational side where they'd sell things that are in the few hundred or few $1,000s. So yeah, you could go in there and get, you know, the expensive engagement ring or the beautiful necklace, but it's almost like LVMH hyper focused on that area, even though it was a very small part of their business. They just got excited about it. And I worry that if they just focus on like the niche high end thing, it's like Louis Vuitton stopped doing all the volume business. It was like, let's just focus on the VIPs that buy like our custom furniture and clothing. Like, that's not enough people.
Yeah, yeah. So highlights of the brands that released something new. We've got quite a lot of coverage on the website. Is there anything that was particularly, because I'm looking at all the coverage on the website. We'll share the screen for those watching on YouTube, or if you're on Spotify, you can also see the images. I struggle to go, oh yeah, that's a highlight of what was released during LVMH Watch Week. It just seemed okay. The Zenith was maybe quite nice. David will like a sporty $100,000 bejeweled Zenith. Although it did feel to
Yes.
me like they cheated a bit because there's none of the phasing of the gems like there is in Rolex
Yes.
or even Hublot. It's just 4
It's a
yellow
lie.
ones next
Color
to 4
blocks, as
green
they call
ones.
it.
Sorry?
Color blocks, as they call
Yeah,
it.
it's just blocks of the color rather than the intricacy of, phasing all the colors on the color wheel right the way around.
Well, the one that did it
Ah.
properly was the Bindi one. Remember, Ripley?
Yeah, I was about to say it's interesting they went with this approach because not that long ago they just put forward a rainbow bezeled watch with that really did it right with the complete gradient around it. So it's
Yeah.
interesting how they've gone with these little white cardinal point marker things here. But where are they placed at? What is this? This doesn't correspond with our markers. Hold on, I'm just looking at this now.
It's designed to be confusing. You don't want to know what time it is. You want to stare at the dial for
I
as
think
long
it
as possible.
corresponds with a. I think it's a striking 10th because there's like 10 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, because it's a high frequency chronograph, right? Okay,
It's
I guess.
gonna be a striking 10th.
Yeah, it's the high frequency chronograph movement. Okay, well that makes sense, I guess. It just looks a little awkward.
Not going to be confusing. So Zenith did something that at least made me sit and look for more than 20 seconds. Anything else that was a highlight from LVMH?
Well, Hublot's using more green SAXEM, which is look, I like anything SAXEM. Like if it's transparent and colored and I'm and 100,000 or in this case like $250,000, I'm on board for it. But this is not what I want in SAXEM. Give me the neon yellow with like the matching strap. I guess this does come with a green strap, but they chose not to include a single image of the matching transparent green strap. But it's interesting how green was the first SAXEM model they did. This is now, I think, the third piece in green SAXEM, but we just got that one neon yellow one. But I want more highlighter watches. This is...
Why are the hands not green is my question.
Because I don't know. They already did a green one last year, but it was a Big Bang, not a Tourbillon version. So that was more green. This is like black with just a kind of a green case. I don't know. I don't love this. This is my least favorite SAXEM Hublot. So I think it's strange that they're just doing green. Obviously, the emerald green looks like more high end and look more luxury, but I mean, the part of the fun of the watch like this is something a little bit irreverent and ridiculous. So I think neon yellow is just a better use of the material.
Yeah, it doesn't look very legible, I have to say.
I
You're going to
can't
struggle to read the time on this one.
I only know
for
it's 10:10 because these are
$231,000.
press images. Yeah, I can't tell you what time it is.
It's like you can't. It's like if you can't decide between like the the all black Hublot theme and their color theme. It's like you're trying to have the best of both worlds here, like a super bright colored one, but also all black, but also neither of them.
One giant compromise during the design meeting.
It was a matter of years, and here it is. Here it is.
The movement though, the base movement again, not in this execution, but this micro rotor automatic tourbillon. I actually think it's a really cool movement. It's architected nicely. Again, this is not the best execution for it, but this is one of the more interesting movements in this high end level here. And speaking of new watches from the event, the TAG Heuer Formula One Chronograph is probably the group's most important watch from an investment perspective. Not only is it tied to Formula One, which is really most of what LVMH is going to be thinking. I think that TAG Heuer as a brand is going to be doing more and more and more stuff related to Formula One with its products as well as all of its campaigns, especially for the first few years. It wants to make the most out of its big investment. I have mixed feelings about the watch. I wore it for a few days. It's cool looking, but it's very much like blast to the past when bigger, more macho cases were popular, a little bit more aggressive design. it's not a bad watch, but it doesn't necessarily feel like the type of watch that would come out today. It almost feels like they designed it like 15 years ago and like, oh, let's go with that one. I I think that it's also very sober looking, which I like. It doesn't look too silly. There aren't a lot of unnecessary design elements. On the screen right now is the Red Bull one, so it has this sort of slightly textured dial, but the other ones are very, very sober. I think the one issue that I have with the watch that I would change is that the hands actually don't pop out enough. Um, I want this to be, it's not that it's not legible, it's just I want them to visually pop out a little bit more. And I think it has to do with some of the sort of black on black coloration there. Yeah, that's the one that I was wearing for a while. And it's again, it's perfectly handsome watch, but again, it also it just feels like it wasn't quite designed today. It feels not retro in the in traditional sense, but again, like 10-15 years ago, I was like, oh, this would have been something I would have expected more. And the Formula One relationship is a big deal. This is not going to be the entry level because this is the automatic chronograph. They see it as being entry level for a mechanical watch ish, at about $5,000. I think in a couple of months we'll see a three-hand mechanical, probably more three-hand quartz ones of the Formula One, and we'll really see what the bottom is. But this is sort of, again, I think going to be a little bit of the more expensive watches. But again, the Formula One is their entry-level collection, and it's going to be important because of the renewed relationship with the racing series.
Somebody was pointing out just how much money potentially TAG are spending on Formula One versus just actually how big a company TAG actually are. And the numbers didn't appear to make a great deal of sense. It appeared to be spending significant percentage of its turnover potentially on this sponsorship. How on
TAG is not
earth?
spending it. It's the
Yeah.
group that's spending it.
So I'm curious as to whether, like, when you watched Formula One before and it was Rolex were absolutely everywhere. And it kind of worked. They were spending a lot of money, but everything was just Rolex green everywhere you looked. And you didn't really see that many pictures of watches and all the rest of it. Whereas in this, you're going to have to see stuff from everyone within LVMH group. Is it just going to make Formula One look an absolute mess in terms of billboards and posters and stuff on things? It's just going to be absolutely everywhere. It's going to look like an absolute jumble sale of a sponsorship deal if they're not careful.
For watch enthusiasts, is that a bad thing? Do you not want to see the pinnacle of motorsports absolutely splattered with every single watch associated thing LVMH has in its portfolio? That sounds like good fun for Sunday mornings for me.
Yeah, but it's not just going to be. But it's not just going to be the watches. That's the problem. It's going to be bottles of champagne and stupid-looking luggage, and
yes,
I
it's already a mess anyway.
Sorry,
it's
going to be
a mess anyway.
But can you imagine all the Formula One? Like, imagine all the pit crews being, you know the things they use to blow the air through the engines when the engine's warm but the car is stationary. Can you imagine them all decorated with the LVMH luggage branding? Because it's a big square box they're holding in front. It's now LVMH. I think it's going to be an absolute jumble sale.
I think that'd look fantastic for Ferrari. Bright red Ferraris, Louis Vuitton like engine coolers, absolutely.
There's not going to be as much visual stuff as is going to be for on the ground. There's a huge hospitality element to Formula One, and LVMH wants to use it as a draw to invite customers and retailers and salespeople. Once in a while. So I think that, yes, you're right. It's going to be all kinds of LVMH group brand stuff all over the place, but I don't think they're mainly focusing just on the display advertising part, though you're right. It's not just going to be TAG Heuer. But this is part of the, the value play that LVMH is playing. They want to buy this visibility because they think it adds to the desirability and the overall value of their brands. They seem to be obsessed with this. This is, in their opinion, how the stock value is affected, not the actual performance of the brands. And, I think also they know this is going to be a tough time for luxury. So they're hoping that this type of visibility will get people very, very excited about brands like TAG Heuer. So I think in some ways it's a calculated gamble. I wouldn't know what to say it's a bad use of their money. But it's definitely not a complete plan, right? They have to do a few other things other than just invest in Formula One.
Yeah. Do you think it will work? do you think a year from now we're going to be able to look and go, actually, yeah, more folk are buying TAG Heuers? If we go to our local boutique,
I think part of this is I think we're going to see a lot more TAG than we will other watch brands from LVMH. And it doesn't really make sense given the size of TAG, but I think some of this is a long-term plan. Look, LVMH isn't short on money. TAG isn't going to be going anywhere. They're not going to just liquidate the brand in one day because they had a bad quarter. So I think this is part of a much longer plan to assert TAG as like this omnipresent, accessible luxury brand that Rolex was for so many years until Rolex became unattainable and this hype brand. But, you know, I could totally see LVMH thinking we're going to invest heavy into Formula One. We're going to, you know, cultivate this desirable, interesting image for TAG and, you know, by association, the other LVMH watch brands. But this is going to be something that not 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, even down the line, but like 10 years, 20 years, when someone who's, you know, a child now is looking back on TAG, getting their first luxury watch and saying, oh, I love TAG. You know, I used to watch Formula One with my dad on the weekends, and we'd always see the TAG Carrera clock as was the race counted down to 0. You know, it's going to be something like that. But I think this is a much longer term plan for the overall long-standing public perception of TAG than it is something that in 1 year, you know, next quarter, we're going to be going, oh, they're geniuses over there for this financial move.
well, I guess we shall see. Any final highlights from LVMH vibes? Do we think, was it a positive event? Was it surrounded by depression and, oh dear, what's going to happen this year? What do we think?
Well, their event was supposed to be in Los Angeles, and it didn't end up happening in Los Angeles. So I think that's all I need to say.
Fair enough. Good. Right, let's look at an article from David, his latest Grinding Gears. David asked the question, is it about time we start configuring watches like cars? Now, here's my opening gambit to you, David. Is it more likely that watch brands move towards configuring watches like cars, or car brands move to configuring cars like watches? Who would would car brands rather be like watch brands than watch brands like car brands?
Well, based on the premise of this article, nobody. You know,
Nobody's moving.
it's
Maybe, David, you should define what that means. I'm not sure if everyone knows exactly what you're trying to say with that comparison.
yeah. Basically, this article is about how you can configure your car, your next car, to your liking, you know, most of the time, and you have a bunch of color options and trims and whatnot, and you can just get a car that is down to your exact taste, exactly the way you want it. Sometimes there are limitations with different packages and whatnot. You know, sometimes an interior color is limited to whatever package or trim level or something like that. So that happens, but still. Whereas with watches, what happens is that, like this Watch on 222, it takes 2 years for the brand to come up with the exact same watch, not in gold but in steel, and not with a champagne dial but with a blue dial. So when it's 2 years for a 1,000-year-old material and a blue dial, then I think we're a very slow-paced industry even for our own liking, isn't it? So basically my point is that sometimes, most of the time, what brands do is that they limit these dial colors in time. Sometimes they debut a watch and then it takes them years to bring out new colors. And then what they do, which is, I bring Omega and Panerai, but I could also bring IWC and a bunch of others as an example to this, or Cartier or whoever, the list is extremely long, is what they do is they limit the dial color to certain references. So if you want a green dial, Seamaster, I'm just saying like something, then, there are certain different references that you can have, but only those. So if you like a slightly different one, there's no way for you to have it. Or just about no way for you to have it. So basically what I'm saying in this article is, why don't these brands allow people to configure a watch to their liking? And if not the entire watch, because I understand cases and bezels and whatnot are difficult to produce, manufacture, and modify, then just dials. And maybe they could do it at a retail level, not in the tiniest little shop or something like that, but major 80s with after sales service centers. which would allow them to swap a dial out, because it's easier to store a bunch of dials and allow people to choose a dial that they want and swap that in than to stock 5 different watches, entire watches with boxes, with like a very expensive stock and whatever, which is much more expensive and costly for the AD to keep as inventory. Just swap the dial out.
So, what do we think would happen to aBlogtoWatch coverage if we only covered new watches and not something which should just be considered a new color? How many less articles would we be producing if we just covered brand new watches rather than, as you say, stuff that should just be part of the configuration schedule on a watch? How quiet would it get?
I don't know. It's a good question. We definitely have a lot less. It wouldn't be nothing. There'd be a lot of arguments as to what constitutes a new watch for sure. I think what David says is a good point. I think there are companies that do stuff like that. I know that they never really have been able to have a high volume. The number of people that know with confidence how to personalize a watch with the colors and the things that they want, it's relatively low. What comes to mind is certain brands like Laco, which continues to give you options like if you want a decorated or non-decorated movement. Sometimes there's other various types of options you have, and I've always wondered, like, who's coming in here and be like, I know exactly how to configure this. Sometimes I worry that too many options is bad. It slows down sales because people ultimately are worried. They want an expert to choose for them. So I think that there are services out there that offer customization for relatively low prices, a sort of modular look. And I'll also say that, maybe for the consumer, they can't configure watches like cars, but internally at the brand, that's exactly how they build watches these days, to be modular. So they have all these configurators. And if you look at on the walls when they're trying to decide what to come out with, they've used their own configurators to mix and match dials and straps and hands and stuff like that. So yeah, they're playing with that way, but for various types of economic reasons, they have to come out with a series or they can only build so much. But there's definitely a market out there for stuff like that. It's fun to customize watch, especially when you're a mature collector. It's one of the best things to do is be like, I know what I want and I can order it. That's a good feeling.
What would it do to the, if one of the big brands, okay, maybe not a Rolex or an Omega, but the next tier down, a Zenith, was suddenly to allow you to configure, or TAG was suddenly to allow you to configure your watches to your heart's content? What would that do to the industry?
Wholesale would die. There would not be a bunch of SKUs for them to buy. They would be like, well, we just want to sell watches one at a time. And the brands would be like, you can't do that. You need to buy 100 watches this month or whatever.
So, what would it do to the used market? Would it kill? Would it sort a lot of the problems out if actually you
It'd be like
chose
shopping
your
for
watch?
bespoke clothing. You'd just be searching through racks and racks of stuff for something that fits you. They'd be out there, but it'd be hard to hunt.
But you'd have like the pre-registered, like you do with cars. You can buy the one off the lot today, but you're pretty much buying the one that's been configured by the marketing team within the brand as what they think will be the most popular. But if you want to wait 2 weeks, you can get a Mercedes S-Class in canary yellow with, purple brake shoes or whatever, and something, not a 3-pointed star on it. You can get, your Sarpaneva moon phase face instead of the 3-point star. Would it make any sense for a brand to go, right, this is how we're tackling this market? We're just going to change the game here. Why are you just buying? I mean, I can imagine the marketing spiel. Why are you just buying what some guy or girl in a tie wants you to buy from the AD and go through all the pain and palaver when you can just log on here and you can buy exactly the watch you want and exactly the colors with diamonds, no diamonds, strap, bracelet, all the rest of it. But it's a big brand, a big luxury Swiss brand, as opposed to some self-assembly thing that comes out of somewhere in the Far East. Oh, well, maybe actually the other one's coming out of the Far East as well. That's a different question. And that's how they break the watch internet. But say, right, from now on, Zenith, order the one you like.
Are you referring to that mismatched black and green Hublot that someone else decided was the good thing to buy?
Well, it's IWC does it with their Portugueser. Like if you go into the boutique, you can play around with it.
Oh, let's just wait. Portugiser. Is that how we're pronouncing it now? Is it? It's not
Geezer.
Portugueser, the Portugueser. But I
They
don't
were
think-
fine at Portuguese. Then they decided to force everyone to say Portugueser, and I'm going to emphasize geezer every time now.
You just like geese.
you just want to give it a little, make it.
I was happy with Portuguese. What was wrong with that? Why did they have to add geezer in it?
I don't want to call it the geezer. I guess it is a bit of a
Nobody
geezer
does.
watch.
That's the point.
But either way, they let you play around with the different dials and kind of see what looks good. But at the end of the day, not a lot of things look good. And if you go on those websites that let you like design your own shoes with the different colors, you might be able to make something that looks good. But a lot of times you're looking at it going like, oh, it kind of looks different in person than I thought. So you're going to be having to pick between different colors or things like an work. How are you going to replate all of the intricate mechanics on the movement and the displays? You know, you could really only do this with certain things like a dial, strap, maybe a bezel, you know, kind of like what Rolex does with their watches. But I think it would be a refreshing thing for those brands who could, like David said, just have some dials on board. If it's a steel watch and you can choose between, you know, at least a handful of dial colors, it's like a card. You want it in black, white, silver, red, blue, you know, kind of the core collection stuff.
David, my question for you is, do you frequently look at a watch and say, I would like it so much more if only I get it in this color, this material? Like, do you find yourself in this situation a lot?
I do. I sure do. Yes.
Okay.
And I also find myself frustrated whenever it takes them 3 years to bring out the dial color I would have wanted. And I say this in the article. I'm like just over the watch at that point, you know, because I like it for its freshness, for the case, for the bracelet, for whatever. But then if it takes them 2 years to bring out an exciting dial color like this freaking like BB Chrono from Black Chrono from Tudor, that's a dated watch. It has dated proportions. It's a very suboptimal watch in almost every regard, and yet all that they do about it is bring a pink dial, and then it takes them a year to bring out a slightly blue dial. Just work on the proportions, work on the case, work on the dial, work
So
on the
wait, what
movement,
color
work
do
on
you
the
want
bracelet.
the black
Yeah, that's
bay
how I
in?
know. What is David's ultimate watch color?
I like the colors. I don't mind the colors. What I do mind is a watch that is stale for like 5 years. 3 years go by, nothing happens, and then like pink, and then another year goes by and it's like blue. But it's been the same freaking thing for 5 years, and it's never been a great watch.
If there's anything this industry likes, it's the same freaking thing for X amount of years. Okay, David?
Yes, isn't that great?
Oh, yes.
Well, we do this podcast once a week. Some would say that it's the same freaking thing every week. And on that
Rick,
note,
I'll ask you.
Uh-huh.
You're in this situation. Is it a new house if you paint it a different color?
oh, don't start with me.
That's a
painting
good
houses.
one.
This is hitting where it hurts right now in the process of building a new house and therefore having to choose all sorts of things. Choice overload. I would be right now. I'd be like, just make all of your watches one design. Make everything black. No white dial, just black dial, black everything, stainless steel, so that I don't have to make any choices. I have too many choices in my life right now. I want less choices.
Well, we came full circle. David wants more choices. Rick is like, enough of the choices already.
Just build one thing. Just build one thing. Focus on that. No choices.
So you want everyone to have the same watch?
Wait, it totally makes sense why Rick wants loves Panerai. They do two things.
Do you want 2 hands or 3 hands?
Exactly. A date window, no date window. I have very few choices to make in my watch life when you like Panerai. It simplifies things, makes things easier, especially when I have lots of other choices I need to make. I think, who's the woman that wrote that book about, simplifying your life and chucking out stuff that you don't use? Some famous, somebody maybe in the chat or
Marie Kondo, I think.
That's the one.
But it's not eliminate the things you don't use, because at that point, get rid of your crown guard bridge protector thing. You don't need that. You don't use that. It's eliminate the things that don't bring you joy, and clearly that crown protector bridge brings you an immense amount of joy.
Always got to have something to play with. But so right now I'm in the simplify my life. I want less choices, and that has to start with watches. Less choices in watches, so I'll just stick with Panerai. I've only got one, and that's it. I'm sticking to it. I don't need another Panerai. I almost looked at a Radimir last night and thought, well, maybe I need a Radimir to go with a Luminor. But no. Too many choices. Just stick with the one. So there we go. So I'm completely opposite from David right now, as it happens. Just
You don't have to have all the colors at once, Rick. It's fine. You can have just black dial.
I would honestly be tempted to go full communist, and there should only be one watch brand left. I'm not sure which one it should be. But maybe the only watch available should be a Submariner, and that's it. Just make everyone wear the same
Made out
thing.
of tin.
Made out of tin.
Yeah, they have enough issues meeting demand for Submariners. This is where Casio. We already discussed if it was a communist nation, Casio would need to produce the watches. It'd be most efficient.
You can exchange your tin Submariner for a loaf of bread.
Right. Well, while we're talking about, well, I'm not sure really how to link this together. We're going to talk about rich people bending the knee to a certain Donald who are involved in the watch industry. So, yeah, this is an interesting thing that's happened this week. If you watched the inauguration, you will have spotted that there was a whole load of, very rich people standing beside each other. You had Jeff Bezos, you had the guy from Alphabet / Google, you had Zuckerberg, you had Elon Musk. That was all on one side of the room. However, on the other side, you had this lot. And this is a photo from Miss Tweed. Sitting behind, you also had, so we had, of the 5 richest people in the world, it looked like we only had 4 of them there, but the 5th one was hiding in the corner behind the bushes as the Arnauds paid a visit to the inauguration of a president. Now, I'm not sure they've ever attended the inauguration of any other president. I'm not sure that the 5 richest people in the world have ever really been in the row immediately behind the former presidents, etc. Does this speak to any slight worry that certain very rich people might have who are based not necessarily in the USA about what might be coming down the track in terms of tariffs and all the rest of it? It's a bit of glad handing going on here in order to head off at the pass, import tariffs on Swiss watches or other French luxury goods. What do we think?
Probably, but I think it's because France had no one else to send.
Just because
Macron is, going his way, never got along with Trump to begin with.
Trudeau couldn't go. I mean, not French, but speaks French, and that was maybe as close as they were going to get.
Mr. Arnaud and his family are the perfect delegation. They're into luxury stuff, and they get along well with them. And of course, it shows that France takes seriously. Nobody wants to be in the target right now of his remarks. I can understand that. And Europe is in a fragile situation. The last thing they need is retaliatory or any type of tariffs or anything like that with the United States. We know that France is traditionally not really kind to American big tech companies in terms of regulation. So they're just
Do you
trying
mean
to
that they have to pay taxes, which is just a terrible thing to do?
I'm just saying the U.S. hates things like this, and France is like, you got to play fair. So I think France is in a complicated sort of duality of trying to appease a bunch of interests here. I think it makes sense. They're like, Mr. Arnaud, we have no one else to say. Can you please go to this thing? It's like, oh, fine, I'll take some of my family members.
So explain to me why Dubai Watch Week is also choosing to put this on their main feed. This is a copy. It doesn't exist on their main feed anymore. I don't know if it's so expired. But Dubai Watch Week were asking, which one would you fancy of the Trump watches?
Dubai Watch Week?
Yeah. Which I thought was extraordinary. They decided to publish this on their stories that this fits in.
It's a bit. Well,
vibe.
look, it's a bit tone deaf. They're like, oh, you also have a dictator now. We have more in common. Which version of the King's Watch would you like to have? We were all familiar with that.
Yeah, all just a bit odd. Do we genuinely, as a genuine watch question, do we think that America's attitude to the rest of the world and what's going to happen will have an impact on watch sales?
Oh yeah, this is only good.
This is only good. Why is it only good? Is this the silver lining?
Well, because it's given free rein to powerful people to trample on others, and this is the perfect type of cocktail environment to buy watches. Okay, when people feel they're up and up and they can have others subjugated underneath them, they're very excited about buying luxury timepieces. So is this great for like middle class buying watches? Not necessarily, but there's going to be a lot of money made through investments. All this deregulations have people throwing around a lot of money. It's all very short term, right? Like we know that it's going to be 5 to 10 years, and then everyone's going to look and be like, oh my God, what have we done? What have we done? But for the immediate future, this is going to be great for luxury.
Well, let's wait and see what happens. I guess we have a new feature on the website. I think this is the second iteration of this. I might be wrong. A column called the Flyback, which has been done by Mike. Thought we'd look at this if for no other reason than the complete reference to Indiana Jones and snakes. Interesting story about that. A lot of the snakes were spaghetti, I think, and there was a big thing about whether it was mistreating snakes by throwing them all in the pit. I was listening to some film column podcast the other day. It was all talking.
I mean,
about
how
this.
little do we have to worry about when we're concerned about the suffering of animals in films and wondering if that's? I'm not saying it's not an issue, but like, how comfortable are our lives, and we this is the issues we pull out.
Well, I think it's more because we look at these issues because we feel they're easy issues and distract us from dealing with the big issues, possibly. But that's a different philosophical conversation we're going on.
It's also a great way to broadcast to your peers how good a person you are. Look how much I care.
I care about the snakes. That's been our traditional
so
enemy
much.
forever.
Can't you see how much I care?
Human versus snake. Let's not forget the battle.
Yeah, they're the reason we're like all not hanging out
Genesis.
naked in the Garden of Eden. The snakes have never been on our side.
Snakes
and spiders, okay? Our traditional enemies.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, I quite like this one. This Frank Muller, I think it's actually quite nice. I like this change in case shape. It's obviously,
because it looks like tentacles, right? That looks like the octopus watch.
I assume this is Chinese New Year, by the way. I've not actually checked.
Yeah, Lunar New Year, year of the wooden snake.
Specifically wooden snakes?
Yeah,
or
wooden
just snakes
snake.
in general.
No, wooden snake. So
Wooden
there's
snake.
two cycles.
5 elements.
Yeah, it goes through the animals and it also cycles through the elements. So last year we had the wooden dragon, we got the wooden snake here.
Oh, I did not know that. You learn something every year. So what? So wood is an element as opposed to fire, water.
No, I think
air,
stone,
fire.
metal. I don't know. I'm not paper. No paper. No paper. We had I can't keep. No, we had.
I can't remember
on.
this stuff and the rules of
Paper
Dungeons and Dragons at
dragon.
the same time. It's one or the other.
Well, so what do we think? Year of the Snake. Some good watches produced to represent this.
Boring. The Hublot's kind of interesting, but like this is just so okay. It could be any animal in there. It could be a gopher in there rather than the snake.
The Year of the Gopher watch, the Caddyshack watch, that I would buy. I'd be invested in a Bill Murray Caddyshack celebration.
I mean,
watch.
all
Isn't
you
that
really
cool?
need is the Serpenti. That's the only snake watch you need. Maybe other derivatives and copies of the Serpenti. Once in a while, have like the Hublot that's got the snake scale kind of texture on the metal. I know Frank Muller's done that in the past, sort of crocodile texture. But like just shoving a snake in there in the picture. I mean, it's the least effort way of putting in effort.
I do like the Frank Muller, but I think having a golden snake wrapped around your arm in the form of the Serpenti, I think the battle for
Can't beat that.
Yeah, I mean they could have done one out of wood, like that could be, I guess, terrible
That
on
sounds
the
comfy.
wrist, but I don't know. It wouldn't be better for anybody.
Let's not take this too literally, okay?
Yeah, what happened to that phase of wooden watches? There was a wee moment there for about 18
Termite
months. Where
trick,
wooden
termites
watches-
happened.
Termite.
Yeah. The cold winter.
Cold winter froze to your wrist. Good old
No, they just
right.
fired.
Let's move on a little. Let's do a little bit of hit miss. Maybe we don't have any additional guests this week, so we are stuck to looking at all by ourselves.
Have you tried on the award-winning Raymond Weil Millicene wristwatch? What started with the popular Millicene Small Seconds model has grown into a family of watches that includes the sporty Millicene Chrono and the emotive Millicene Moonphase. The neo-vintage Millicene timepiece platform is built on Raymond Weil's long romance with timeless design and industrial art. Celebrating all that has aged well, the Millicene is a thoroughly modern and accessible mechanical watch meant for devotees of classic horology by promoting traditional comfort, legibility, and proportions. Discover why collectors just like you praise the versatility and poise of the Raymond Weil Millesime collection that comes in sizes ranging from 35 to 39.5 millimeters wide. Geneva-based Raymond Weil is a family-owned and operated company that for nearly 50 years has been celebrating independent watchmaking for enthusiasts everywhere. Visit raymond-weil.com to see more. Thanks.
First up is this little number from Richard Mille. The RM 1602 automatic extra flat. Watches are high-end fashion play, so says Ariel. Tell us a bit about this watch, Ariel.
Well, the Richard Mille, I guess it's rectangular. They've called them the extra flat. They're about 10 millimeters thick. It's sort of was very thin back then.
It never was, Ariel. Not even in 1895. It
Started.
Yeah,
I'm trying
I
to
was
give it
thinking
some
about that.
credibility. Again, it's not a new collection. It's always actually been kind of entry level for Richard Mille, and they decided to bring it back out with the sort of artistic dial. I don't know how to explain this. It's blocky artism. It looks like the combination of a computer maze game and a movement. It looks interesting. It's about as illegible as a Richard Mille as I could imagine. The most notable thing about this is not the watches, but the pretty pictures that Richard Mille made, with a couple of models wearing both the all titanium one as well as one that was what they call it, terracotta colored quartz TPT, which is, I don't know why, like $20,000 more. Not sure if it's the $20,000 more watch there. My favorite thing about these is the shape of the automatic rotor, right? Because they really try to go into this angular theme. So the otherwise half circle shape is kind of turned into this, I don't know, it looks like a part from, I don't know, a plane in Star Wars or something like that. That's pretty nifty looking. So the back of this watch is my favorite thing. Was like 100 and, depending on the version, $120,000, $130,000, something like that. I like that they have us talking about $130,000 to $156,000 around there. So quite a bit of money for an artistic play. I say that it's a fashion theme because they're created this elaborate photo shoot here. I think I'd wear one if they gave me one. It wouldn't be my favorite Richard Mille. But I like that they continue to play around with things. It's like, as much as sometimes people like to make fun of the company, they still seem to come out with new stuff that gets us to talk. And it's like, I'm finding myself, even if this isn't our favorite thing, we're talking about it. So they do have an ability to make art that allows us to feel something. They still have a knack for that.
Yeah, well, let's give it a vote and then we'll have a bit more of a chat about it. Is it a hit? Is it a miss? Or is it a maybe? 1, 2, 3, go. Maybe, hit, miss. I was actually going to give it a hit, and then I looked at it a bit closer. I do like the idea, if anyone's been on Instagram much this week, IWC seem to have been getting a bit of a kicking about their servicing and random parts arriving back with still loose in the cases. And I do like the idea of there being like a screw loose in the case of this, that you could, like one of those maze games, move around the watch. I don't know what they're called. We used to have the little steel ball bearing and you'd have the wee tippy thing.
I know what you mean. Yeah, they had some name.
We had them all as kids before electronics and Nintendo. But then I look at this and I go, what on earth is that actually on? They've like cut the numbers.
So it's two things that make the
randomly.
numbers. It's a transparent sapphire dial, and part of the numbers are printed in white, which you can see, and they look all weird and cut off. And then there's this, like, it almost looks like a neon tube printed on the glass as a thread that kind of runs around between them, connecting them to form the other numerals. It's utterly illegible, but one of the photos will have, you see the dial off of the watch, so it doesn't have any of the architecture, the movement behind it. And there's, on this one, it's the brown line and the white line that form the numbers. So the 8 looks like a backwards 3, but the far right side is actually part of that tube thread light motif that's on it as well.
Oh, I see what you mean. So the 5 is completely made of the other color.
Yeah,
there.
exactly. And so it runs through. is so impossible to read because it looks like you just have a 2 on for the 12, but the 1 is actually part of that, and then the 1's all there, but then the 2's fully the other style, but it looks cool.
I thought maybe the message was, don't look at my watch, look at my face.
Yeah.
Like,
So that's why I gave it a miss. Ariel, you're in the maybe camp.
Look, I've worn this shape before. They actually apparently even further reduced the size of their rectangular watch. So I'm actually curious as to the architecture of the case, more so than the dial. I do believe that this case will come out with probably more traditional dials, and this is just the way they want to introduce it. So I actually want to wear this thing. And it is sort of a ballsy move to be like, my watch costs way more than it needs to. Like, that's a fun thing, if you can get away with that. I do like the maroon colored terracotta there. That is a nice looking material. I still don't know how this quartz TPT, this layered quartz composite, kind of ages over time, or how it deals with scratches. I don't know what could be more scratch prone than titanium. So I think from a color perspective, I'm fascinated by it there. Again, it looks comfortable to be worn on a daily basis. I'm just waiting for, maybe a little bit more of a traditional dial, because like this is one of those like shocking art things where it's like, oh, art, I'm looking at, shocking, but I don't want to keep looking at it. It's not pretty enough to make me want to stare at it all the time. So I think there'll be different dial variations of this. And this is again the RM 1602, which is this particular style. Again, do you guys agree there's probably going to be new dials of this at some point in the future?
this already is a new dial 15 years after launch, this watch has been around for a decade or more. So I think it's already just a regurgitation of what has already been.
Yeah.
They made a big deal out of this new movement, which is not architecturally new movement, but it's like all new pieces there. It's a little bit confusing looking. Like, I feel like, like, have we taken skeletonization a bit too far at this point?
Or they selectively, because they didn't cut away all of it to make it as open as possible. They just kind of cut away these little cublet shapes to make it look cool. But like that's the whole concept of this. I feel they could have made this.
It's like Robo Decay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. I don't know. I refer you all to the answer I gave some moments ago. That you're only allowed to produce one watch, and it should be black, and that's it. I'm sticking with that. That's my new theory of design. Each brand only gets one watch to survive the apocalypse, and it should be black.
Well, Richard
And
Mille
none of
wins
this
that.
should
They
be
have the one with
legible.
water purification tablets and a compass and like a bow and arrow or whatever that thing is.
That should be the
Oh,
one.
the Rambo
yeah.
one?
That's the watch they get. Ripley, you gave it a hit.
I said it's a hit. I think it just looks cool. So much of what RM does is on the tech side, where it's like they're decoupling crowns and all of their variable geometry rotors and stuff. And this is a very much a pure visual expression of an RM. I mean, it's basically a time only watch that just looks cool and then is skeletonized in an interesting manner with an utterly illegible dial. And it looks ridiculous on all of these people's wrists. The smaller wrists, it looks laughably large, even though I guess they've slimmed this one down a bit. But I do like this silhouette for RM because they do like the brand does make interesting thematic executions. I liked the rectangular like bonbon ones they did a few years ago. And I think this blueprint of what they're doing with the movement and how much I guess space they have to work with in there could really serve as an interesting canvas for some other models. I wouldn't be paying $150,000 for them, but I like the color of terracotta quartz TPT, and I mean that almost looks like it's photoshopped in on the wrist in that photo. But I like these. I think they're cool. If I had one, I'd totally wear it and look ridiculous while doing that.
Yeah, Joseph gives it a maybe. What do you think the model said to the photographer when she was handed this and told to put it on her wrist and make it look good? She was just like, how is that possible? Look at the size of this thing. I might as well wear a dinner plate.
Well, rumor has it that these weren't models. They just shot these at the last RM meetup, which was held in apparently the planet of where Dune
Exactly.
takes place. Yeah, and with
No,
these,
Yeah.
actually, hold on a second. Ripley, can you just move slightly to your left and let's just compare your wall to this wall? Is it possible this was filmed at yours? Is there something we need to know? Yeah,
You're in the pockets of Richard Mille.
Yeah,
Yes, that's why I gave it a hit. It's for the background of the
yeah,
photo
yeah,
shoot only.
it's all becoming clear now. Last week it was
Mhm.
David under the duress of the Hungarian government. This year it's Big Meal responsible for Ripley's voting. When you go to model agencies, you can specify what you want. I don't know. I need to have a word with a couple of folk I know that run model agencies. Do you suppose there's any like selection box says we need a model that's got like a 10.5-inch wrist, or to be able to take this? Can you provide your female model with the largest wrist that you've got? Because yeah, this just looks a bit weird. In the chat, breaking news beats. Hautlence apparently made one of the small ball and maze watches a few years back, according to breaking.
It's true, and
Beats.
if memory serves me, it also did not tell the time.
There we go. David, you give it a miss like me.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's cheeky to charge 150,000 for a watch like this. If you look at that movement, it's ridiculous. They just basically threw up a CNC machine at that plate. It doesn't appear to be hand refined at all. It's just a bunch of squares on a square plate. I find the rotor cool looking, but it's also hilarious. It reminds me of that South Park episode in which the Canadians have not yet invented the wheels, so their cars run on square wheels. And it's just this desperate attempt to put a square rotor, which does a circular motion in a square case. This whole watch is just basically just a ridicule of itself, and also I think it's, well, maybe not its customers. I wouldn't go so far as to say, but it's really quite bad. If you look at the wrist shots, pictured in these pyramids, looking for the source of eternal life, it's just so weird. And on Chrono 24, you can pick these up for 75,000. So to pick one of these up for 150, you have to be out of your mind.
Okay. And just so as we can prove, this is the opulence that was being mentioned. Playground Labyrinth watch is, it doesn't tell the time at all. It literally doesn't tell the time.
What's the crown for? Oh, so you can move the little thingy in there.
Yeah.
Oh, is that
No,
just backwards and forwards?
move it like this.
Brilliant. Okay, let's play Guess the Price of the Watch That Doesn't Tell the Time. This article is from... what's happened to Seiko? We haven't played Guess the Price of the Seiko for ages. Have Seiko stopped releasing stuff? I finally got the message. This is from 2016. How much was a watch that didn't tell the time from Hautlence in 2016? Very quickly,
35,000.
Ariel.
Yeah, somewhere in the 30s, somewhere like
30s. David, higher or
35.
lower? 35 higher. Ripley, higher or lower than 35?
Lower, 32.
32. And the answer is, as we scroll down,
Probably 28.
3.5 wide. Oh, how long an article did you write in this watch, Ariel?
12,000.
Oh, what a bargain.
Francs.
Does it have a movement in it?
No.
It's probably
it has a mechanical mechanism that moves the little ball. So there's a little thing.
I thought you would just have to like flip.
No, because it falls in the hole and then it needs to go back up through the other hole.
All right.
Oh my god!
I've not read the article obviously because I've only just been introduced to it. But the fact that Ariel in this article seems to be quoting Eric Cantona, I think is quite interesting. Apart from anything else, so go check out that article from 2016, and you can see what Ariel had to say.
Did I write that?
Yeah, apparently. I mean, your name's on it. Whether
really
early chat GPT, possibly, I don't know.
No. It must be me. I've written thousands of these things. I sometimes it's funny when I read my writing. I'm like, I don't remember writing this, but it happened.
Right. So that's number one. Let's for our second iteration of Hit Miss maybe this week. Let's take the bull by the horns. He's not here, so we can say whatever we like about him. This is the Detrash Midnight Skydive Watch. Ripley, you've had a hands-on in this. I've had a hands-on in this. Ripley, tell us what you thought of it.
It's quite a solid little watch. We're in it right now. It's I mean, it's well put together. It's not expensive. I think one of the things people point out a lot and take issue with is, the name of it, the brand, it doesn't convey connotations of luxury. And that's very much not the point. You know, this isn't a multi-$1,000 piece. It's supposed to be a fun thing that presents a good product and has all of the environmental ties of, you know, what the brand does and the recycled materials and giving back to the planet and all of that. So it's really, you know, a fun way to enjoy watches and get a solid piece from a brand that doesn't take itself too seriously. And I ultimately like it. You know, this isn't a watch that you're going to buy to impress people with the luxury of it or the innovation or the proprietary movement. This is just a solid, well-crafted dive watch that tells a story of sustainability and is supposed to just bring awareness to that in a light-hearted, approachable manner.
Okay, so setting aside all personal relationships and that he might never appear on the show again, depending on what we do, let's give this a vote. Is it a hit, a miss, or a maybe? 1, 2, 3, go. Hits, 2 maybes, and 2 hits. So interestingly, the 2 people that have handled the watch have given it a hit. Ariel, why is a maybe?
Well, I'm also someone who's not entirely sold on the name. I keep looking at it, wanting to make a joke out of it and call it the Retrash watch, like get the planet dirtier. I'm very skeptical on the idea that you can clean up the world through your luxury purchases, watches or otherwise. So I've just never felt super compelled to make a purchase decision based upon that, because it's sort of like saying, like, do you vote that the planet's dirty? I guess I don't think that I can help it with my purchase. I felt that the hands did not need to be skeletonized. That's just not necessary. And those are sort of the downsides. On the plus side, it's a pretty watch overall. I know there's different colors that are made, but you know, it's kind of part spin. He sort of picked and choose. I like this bezel, I like this font. So I wouldn't say it's entirely original, but it ends up being nice looking and legible. I wouldn't not wear it. Probably my favorite part is the little character that's on the crown, I believe, in the case back. Again, not an entirely original thing. I've probably seen this character, but he may have had it adapted for his needs. It's like literally a clock face. You know, it looks like something from the 20s or something like that. That I think is friendly and nice, and I think is actually a very positive part of it. So I haven't worn it like Ripley. I imagine it's relatively comfortable, but at the same time, this is a competitive area. You can get plenty of watches at this price range that are, you know, substantially similar.
David?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very crowded field of watches at this price point and with this design. So where it has to stand out is reclaimed, you know, like this Detrash concept of reclaimed waste whenever possible, as I read the article now. So yeah, I'm not really sure about, you know, buying more to produce less, you know, of trash or something like that. But if you have to buy a watch, or if you want to buy a watch, then why not something that is doing a little bit good for the planet? I've been expecting watch brands to pick up more on this. Speaking of larger watch brands, a little bit more quickly. At this point, I was expecting more of the luxury brands to do more and be louder on their sustainability efforts and whatnot. But it's apparently not happening, not yet. So this remains a niche to this day.
I mean, Breitling went through a wee moment a couple of years ago whereby it was all about sustainable gold, and did they go down the man-made diamonds route where it was all about being able to track everything right the way through the process?
Yes.
And it just seems to have disappeared from the conversation. And it's gone back to the small micro brands to do this, and you maybe see a sustainability report from Oris or Breitling once a year, but it doesn't really get much coverage. Don't really feel like they push it very much. I think there probably is an inherent issue, which is, as you say, it's a luxury good. It's all superfluous. So the idea that you produce something you don't need from waste just kind of seems, well, just don't buy it in the first place. You don't need it. It seems to be, it's kind of the inherent contradiction. But I like this. I was very impressed when I received the sample that came to me about just how solid a watch it is for the price that it is. So no, it was a hit for me. Ripley?
Yeah, it was a maybe for me until I saw it in person. It surpassed my expectations when I saw it in the metal. But I don't think the concept of this is that the quantity of metal or any plastic for the straps removed is going to tip the balance in any way, but rather it's a way to showcase, what can be done with sustainable materials and start the discussions around it. No quantity of materials is really going to move the needle in the watchmaking industry, even for giant companies. But it really is more about kind of starting that conversation. And part of why I like Detrash as a brand in general is it's very earnest as far as what it's doing. It's not trying to project these ridiculous notions of like weekend LARPing soldier military guys or deep sea explorers or anything like that. It really is more about just putting a quality product together and having it speak to sustainability. But it's kind of nice that it's a dive watch and the marketing material doesn't have a bunch of ridiculous things about that no one is ever doing with these, like jumping out of helicopters in rebreather suits or anything like that. It's a very earnest take on a watch. And if someone asked me, hey, what's that watch you're wearing? What the conversation that's going to transpire about it's ultimately a productive thing for the environment.
Boris on the chat, Seiko has stopped releasing watches because of the ridicule it gets for releasing a new watch every week. So agreeing with what we are suggesting. So I think that's perfectly reasonable. Now, he doesn't know he's done this, but Guy, the erstwhile owner of Detrash, has left as a challenge, which I feel we should accept, which is he does have a newer watch variation. And bear in mind our conversation, David, about...
have they been able to pack more trash in it?
Well, he's got this. I think he was wearing something similar last week, the California dial, and he's looking for it to be named. So, David, in the spirit of you wanting a selection box of all possible variations of watches, I feel that we should take it upon ourselves to try and give this watch a name, however rude or inappropriate that might be, and force Guy to adapt it for his
I have
accurate
an
production.
option, just throwing this one out there.
Okay.
It's the California dial, and thinking about what's going on in California, I think we could just call it the Flaming Trash.
The Flaming Trash.
Yeah.
There we go. I quite like that. A name that bears no relationship to the watch and how it looks in the slightest, which is very Swiss watch industry of us. So the Flaming Trash. David, any suggestions? Ripley, any suggestions? I mean, it's not a Tiffany blue, but it's another one that's like within screaming distance of that shade. The screaming.
I'm happy it's not Tiffany blue. Maybe they could call it D-Tiffany.
The DTIF. The DTIF blue. DTIF, there we go. So,
or on the trash theme, the dumpster diver.
Yeah,
the dumpster diver.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else in the chat that's got any suggestions? We have a few. We will run them past Guy and select. Maybe we'll have a vote on it. Select which ones. Go to the Spotify account, and you can see whether I've put a vote up for a poll as to what we should call this, from Flaming Trash to Dumpster Diver to the DTIF watch. That sounds like a good starter for 10. Right. Finally, on this week's a watch.
The Tiffany.
I would just say this is not a watch that we've covered on a blog to watch, but we have covered it in the chat between the four of us. So I thought I would find where it existed on the internet, and it exists in Watch Pro. And a prize to whoever wants to undertake the pronunciation of this watch. But this is from Ulysse Nardin.
Oh gosh.
It's a watch named after a guy who hides his face. I don't know if that's his shtick. Is that this artist's shtick?
Maybe it's not his hand. Maybe someone's choking.
Every one of the images from this campaign has him covering most of his face. So either he hates being photographed or he likes being very ironic.
So a Kyrgyzstan-born designer. I mean,
don't look at me. Somebody's
got to be designing stuff in Kyrgyzstan, I suppose. Vezvolod Sever Chernapanov. Sounds like something about Christmas time. A artistic monitor. Oh, right. He doesn't just go by his name. He goes by an artistic moniker, because why not just go by your name?
Which is less pronounceable than his actual name. Imagine that.
Amurex Pientre. No? Is that even close? Does anybody know? Pientre. Well, whatever. Right, okay.
So what did Ulysse and Nardin see in this relationship?
Yeah, so does anybody know anything about this watch? Ulysses Nardin, it looks like you know how we were talking about watches and fires? This looks like what a watch where the case had been in a fire. It's kind of all smoked.
It does look charred, yes.
It does look like a charred watch.
It does, yeah. It looks like you left a
Uh,
regular blast skeleton out in a fire. The case got all dark and the crystals got all foggy and smoky and messed up, and the loom burnt out of the hands or whatever, or got discolored.
So this is what happened. Ulysse Nardin gives this guy a watch and say, "How would you change it?" Right? He takes it for a few days. He drops it in the fire. He returns it to them. He's like, "I think there's been some damage." They don't know he's being honest and think he's being weird and artsy. And they're like, "Is this what he wants us to make? Is this good enough, sir?" And he's too busy and doesn't care. He's like, "Yeah, whatever."
This is the website from Ulysses Nardin, and you'll notice it has a request allocation on it. You think we should request an
Oh my
allocation?
goodness.
Limited edition of 29 pieces, 31,000 Swiss francs.
Yeah, it's nearly 10.
What is this watch?
Nearly 10K over a
bothers me.
standard titanium blast skeleton.
Is that right? If I request allocation, what does it ask me? Just email address.
It says, "Are you
But if
feeling
you
okay?"
melt one down and turn it into
Oh.
Detrash, it'll only cost you $500.
By submitting this request, I confirm my intent to purchase this watch pending availability. Right. Hold on a second.
Now take some
Guy
backsies.
at dtrash.com. Salutation. I think Guy is a
Dr.
sir.
Mister.
Lord. No, won't let me tell you. Guy would prefer not to say. Guy, last name Detrash.
I think the salutation should be blast. That looks like a new salutation.
Okay.
Use the designer's name.
No. He'd like one of his own watches. Listen, there's only one thing we can do here for the allocation. It's asking for a phone number. Which
How
just means we have to
scared do
play
you
this.
have to be to say, "Will you pay for this?" to actually have to write allocation request?
You wanna talk? Let's hear your thoughts on a blog to watch. +44 738 6690 897. +44 738 6690 897.
There we go. That's the phone number we'll
is that
use.
Cartman? I feel like
I'm
It
not
must
honestly
be.
sure. I need
The
to
old
ask.
royalties?
I need to ask him whether it's from somewhere or what it is. So the phone number is +44 07386 690 897 for the pre-allocation number. Correspondence language. What
Kyrgyz.
language would you like Ulysses Nardin to speak to us in? Russian?
Kyrgyz.
what country is that guy from again?
Kyrgyzstan.
Oh, Kyrgyzstan.
What?
It's not
Well,
an
okay.
option. It's not.
Darn.
So
Russian,
you can't
I
actually
guess.
speak to him in his own language. So
It's definitely
Russian's probably
Russian.
is Russian closest. I would like to be contacted by
Signal.
Right, okay. I'm
Why
saying-
like
Not
signal?
signal.
Put it on
Listen,
a cloudy
what's that? I
sky. Your watch is ready.
I thought I would like to be
Smoke
contacted
signal.
by was like the CEO, the sales representative. No, it's what form of communication. So WhatsApp, WeChat. Is WeChat the
AI,
Chinese one?
Humid.
WeChat is WeChat the Chinese WhatsApp?
Yep.
Yeah. So WeChat has to be country. Oh, okay. Well, I've always wanted to pick a random country from one of these
Yeah.
things.
Make sure
What's
it's
our
very
Benin.
Kyrgyzstan, come on.
Benin. No. Benin sounds like the kind of country. I don't know where.
Yeah.
Benin's in Africa somewhere. Benin. Oh, city. That doesn't.
No,
really
good
help.
luck.
Do you
You
own
cannot
a
name a
Ulysses
single
You
city in
regret not
Benin.
going with Kyrgyzstan, right?
Do you own
It's Porto Novo.
Is the city in Benin? Is it
Yeah, that's the capital.
Porto Novo?
Novo.
No.
I don't think we have a WeChat account for our caller number. We might
Hey,
need to
we're about
establish
to.
that.
We're about to. Do you own a Ulysses Nardin now? How
No,
should
I
answer
was waiting
this?
for
I
a
don't.
charred one. Now it's my
But
time.
no, it'll be our first. It'll be our first Ulysses Nardin. Okay, I agree to.
They
receive
love new
another-
customers.
You know why
Yep,
he's hiding his face?
Right,
It's
okay,
because we've done
and
nothing except talk
submit.
about Terry Stern's face since he showed it during the Cubitus debacle. And now this guy is just like, "Oh, we're releasing a watch. Don't look at me. Don't tell me my face looks." Yeah, what if his face looks just like the watch, like the Cubitus? How bad are we going to feel if it's just like a black void under the mask with like some fume effect?
if you don't know who this guy is already, this isn't getting you involved. Like, shouldn't they be showing some of his other work or something he's done? I don't know even what he does. I you know what I mean? Like, they just assume that you know about this individual. He might be this really impressive guy. We have no idea because all we know is what half of his face looks like.
I mean, I could Google him and see what else he's done, but while I want to, well, he's hiding
It
his
says
face
it.
there.
Look at
Or
it.
he's-
Pushes the limits of design. How? What on earth are you pushing here other than our patience?
Pushing our patience. That's this show's title for this week. Right, let's give it a vote because we ain't actually done that yet. So on the count of 3, is it a hit, a miss, or a maybe? 1, 2, 3, go. Miss, maybe, miss. Ariel, miss, just because it's pushing our patience.
Look, I admire Ulysse Nardin, and I don't want to cast judgment on this individual because I'm sure there's merit to him. But this is how collaborations fail. An unsexy, unoriginal watch at a price which is so high you can't help but make fun of it. So this is actually less than the sum of the parts.
Okay, I'm just going to show you this because this is hysterical. So I have Googled the artist. And
Oh, you
this
remember
is
how to
what you
spell it,
get.
huh?
So no, cut and paste. So Google them, and all you get is pictures of the watch. Okay, you don't get any references to any of his other, except for this one really suspicious image that comes up. And I think questions need to be asked about someone who's formerly been on this show. So this is all him covering his face, his back, and then as you scroll down, you keep scrolling. A picture of Rob Nuds appears. What is this about, Rob? Questions need to be asked. That everything on this is this guy, and then you get a picture of Rob.
It still relates to the watch, basically.
Maybe
if
it's Rob.
Nuts,
Maybe that's why he's covering his face.
Exactly, it's Rob. Yeah. So there we go. Questions need
Did
to be
someone
asked.
refer to him as fake Oshima?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe
Is
it's
that weird? I didn't see that. So yeah, this guy doesn't appear to have a very large
Well,
body of work.
This
when you
actually makes
Google
it
him-
even worse.
Yeah. So there we go. David, you gave it a maybe. Would you like to change that vote?
No. If I were a money no object guy, I like the way this watch looks. I wouldn't care about the guy who designed it or all this nonsense. Money no
It's a
object. I would just
Skagen,
buy it.
David. You like Skagen.
Yes.
It's $150, David.
Yeah. But I want to spend 31,000. What's wrong with that?
I know you do. I
quite-
know you do. We'll get you something else real nice.
Yes. I like this effect on the dial. I like the way this watch looks. I don't like the way it's presented. I would just buy it and not care about it too much. Right in the presentation.
just trying to catch up on some of the misses. I don't know what Joseph was voting a miss on, but it's voted there. The UN from Boris said it's a miss, and he's a Ulysses Nardin artist plant. There you go. From there. So Ripley, you agreed with me. A miss is just ridiculous. £31,000 worth of ridiculousness.
Well, I like David. I don't dislike the way it looks. The fact that it's almost $10,000 more than a standard blast skeleton, which has a more elaborate appearance, is kind of ridiculous, and that's why it gets a miss for me. But I think the concept of the watch and why they did the smoke dial was that obscuring things from view is going to make you want to like contemplate it more and like look into it or something. I glanced at the press release, if I'm being honest. But if that was the case, put a transparent case back on it and let us look at it and go, oh, that's interesting. What's that stuff under the dial? And then you flip it around and get to see that pretty UN movement. This is just needlessly more expensive for not really giving you anything more than this collaboration with this guy who we can't actually find anything out about him other than things related to this watch. So I think it's just really hard to justify that when UN makes so many other fantastic timepieces.
But I think one of us should dress up as him for Halloween.
Is anyone already bald? That seems like a really easy thing to do.
Hold on. A few weeks ago, we were looking for what should be the aBlogtoWatch streetwear for Watches and Wonders. This is it. Big polo neck.
What is it?
Right, well, black jumper,
black
jumper,
sweater.
like this, just black sweater, turtleneck pulled up around your face like a mask. That should be the aBlogtoWatch.
Not creepy at all.
Watches and Wonders.
How's your
No.
big beard?
Well, no one will be able to see us sweating, that's for sure.
There we go. So yeah,
Other than your forehead.
We should all shave our heads or get those plastic things that you put like swimming, flesh-colored swimming caps.
People will think we're like, what is it, the guild from Dune? I like what we've talked about Dune multiple times already.
Hand over the watches now.
He kind of reminds me of the guys from the Mad Max saga, like those guys who are like all really white with the shaved heads. Who, you know who I'm talking about? Like
Yeah.
yeah, he kind of looks like he could fit in with them.
Which watch stand at Watches and Wonders would be least likely to question you walking into their stand dressed like this? Which one's just going to go, yeah, we see that all the time?
Definitely Chanel.
Chanel, just going to
Oh,
wander
they would
in.
love it.
Black
They
and
would
white.
approve.
That's our brand. Come on in.
It's them. As long as you didn't have a roller trolley with you at the same time, you'd be allowed on the stand.
Black and white in. Wheels? No. No wheels.
No wheels. You're allowed on, but no wheels. Maybe we should get that. That should just be. We should just do ironic Watches and Wonders. You know the guys on the internet which have got like the cardboard signs. We should just be writing cardboard signs outside each of the watch brands at Watches and Wonders that sums up
What will we be begging for?
inside. Well, no. So at Chanel, we just write "no wheels allowed" and stand outside the stand.
No wheels allowed.
Getting our photograph taken.
Are we warning people? Stay away if you have
At
wheels.
Rolex, it'd be like form an orderly queue. At Patek, it'd be like no smugness allowed, or some smug reference at Patek.
No references.
At
to
TAG,
other
vibes.
do you know how much money we've just spent on Formula One? Buy our watches, we're broke. Anyway, there we go. So that's our show for this week. Thank you all very much for joining us. You can tune in to the show on the aBlogtoWatch Weekly live YouTube channel to see a little bit preamble, and I suspect this week maybe a little bit post-match, because I think there may be some more to say about Ulysse, Nardin, and this particular watch. But for the main show, that's it for this week. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.